There was some shocking testimony in the sex trafficking trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. First, a woman who's going by the name of Jane, don't blame her at all, testified that she met Jeffrey Epstein when she was 14 years old and that Maxwell and Epstein sexually abused her shortly after that. She also said that Maxwell encouraged her to recruit other girls to perform quote-unquote sexual massages on Epstein. Maxwell has pled not guilty to the charges against her. Another person to testify was Epstein's longtime pilot. This is where things get interesting. He said that Ghislaine was number 2 in the hierarchy of Epstein's operations. He also revealed some of the high-profile people he flew on Epstein's plane, including former President Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, and as well as Prince Andrew, just to name a few. Now, to help us shed some light on all this testimony, we're joined by former sex crimes prosecutor and defense attorney Mari Henderson. Mari, thank you so much for being here. Let's start with the woman whose name is Jane, in quote, right, who testified hiding her name. What do you think of her testimony?
I think she was a very strong prosecution witness. Her testimony was very damning. I mean, she went into detail about the horrendous nature of the alleged crimes committed against her. What I thought was most important about her testimony is it sets the tone for basically the prosecution's theme with the other 3 victims that are going to be testifying after her. That all 4 of these women were groomed by Ghislaine Maxwell, that they were young girls when they were recruited, that they're girls of single moms. They didn't really have fathers, no father figures. Her father passed away, and they basically were promised wealth and fame and access to education and access to power. And that is one reason why these women stayed silent for so long.
Well, when you said one of the reasons, that leads me to the next question, because it's absolutely no surprise that the defense took aim at some of the victims. So what are they arguing exactly?
So the defense is arguing 2 things. The first thing they're arguing is that it didn't happen. They're attacking the credibility of the witnesses. And the problem in sex crimes cases is these are crimes that happen behind closed doors. There aren't independent witnesses to these crimes. There's not going to be someone else to testify, I saw that happen. So it becomes a he said, she said. And when that happens, the most important thing for a defense attorney to do would be to attack the credibility. And what the prosecution can do instead is try to bolster their credibility and show that there's a pattern, there's a strength in numbers here. And then the second defense is essentially that Jeffrey Epstein, he's to blame. He's the elephant in the room. He's the empty chair, and she's being blamed for his crimes.
Well, I was going to say, you said he said, she said. Well, let's get to the he, and in this case, the he is the pilot. The pilot named some very high-profile people that were on that plane. Like, how does that play into this case, and why is that important?
The high-profile people that were named is important. Obviously, we hear these names. We hear Prince Andrew. We hear Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Kevin Spacey, and we think, oh, my God. The importance in the trial and the reason the judge is allowing this in is because it explains why these victims and why these women stayed silent for so long, because they were told and they saw these powerful people that they were flying with. So if they came forward 10, 20 years ago when this was happening, they were intimidated. That's essentially what the prosecution is arguing, that the reason these women came forward is not because they're lying and not because they want access to Jeffrey Epstein's money now that he's passed away, but because they were too fearful to come forward earlier.
Well, Mari, thank you so much for shedding some light on this. Hopefully have you back as this trial goes on. And if you're joining us, DBL Nation, we really appreciate, I don't know why I just read that for any reason, I just read DBL Nation, but we really appreciate your insight in this case. Thank you, Mari. We'll be right back.